this thing of building effective relationships, we really know that it is the cornerstone of happiness. When the lawyer there in Matthew came and asked Jesus what was the greatest commandments, he said, love the Lord with all your whole heart, mind, and soul and mind. He said, and the second is likened in the first, love your neighbor as yourself. Both of those are relationships. And if you think just for a minute, the most important things in all of our lives are relationships. Relationship with the Lord, relationship with your family, relationship with your friends, relationship at work. Life is about relationships. But we talk very little about how do we have effective relationships. And we tend to take relationships for granted and spend our time and our energy on other things. Fortune, fame, power, just things, trinkets, that we want, and we'll put a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort into those things because relationships oftentimes we take for granted. And we take them for granted until what happens? Until we start to lose them. And then all of a sudden we're jerked back into reality and relationships become the most important again. It really does take effort and commitment. Relationships do. It takes effort and commitment, but so often we just say go and relate, but we have very little training on it. The do's and don'ts of how to have effective relationships. What we tend to do, the psychology of it, we tend to do what works for us. That's why bullies are bullies. It works for them. That's why jokesters are jokesters. It works for them. And we all kind of gravitate and find our own little niche, and we say, well, that kind of works for me, so that's the way I relate to other people. Well, there are some tried and true do's and don'ts as it relates to building effective relationships, and that's what I want to talk to you very quickly about this morning. So let's get into that. We talked about it really is the key to happiness. The happiest people that have deep happiness and deep contentment in life are those that have the greatest settled relationships. So if that is true, then it would behoove us to put lots of time and energy and effort into fostering and developing those relationships as opposed to just kind of taking them for granted while we put all our time and energy and money and effort in other things. Put that energy and effort into building these relationships because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. Life is about relationships. So we talked about Jesus said, love the Lord, love your neighbor. That's relationships. It takes effort and commitment to have those. Now let's talk a little bit how the effort that you put into some things you do. Let's look at this. Now, when you meet someone and we start to establish a relationship, Brother Charles and I don't know each other well, but we're starting to develop a relationship and a good relationship. As we are developing and we meet for the first time and then we begin to develop a relationship, there are three questions as he's talking to me and I'm talking to him. There are three questions that people are asking about me or about you. And you need to be conscious that subconsciously they are asking those three questions about you, but you also are asking those same three questions about them. The first one is, can I trust you? That's just a basic. We will have this relationship, and the relationship will develop and nurture and go until in my mind, I decide I can't trust you. Now, I still may be friendly with you. We'll be acquainted. But we're never going to have that close bond when I determine I can't trust you. Or you determine you can't trust me. So it is absolutely essential. One of the foundational building stones of a relationship is you're going to be able to trust me. I will not betray the trust that you have for me. Because I know when I do, our relationship, a serious fault or sever comes in our relationship. So you're asking that question. So if you're in fact asking that, can I trust you? What do I need to do? I need to do what I say I'm going to do. I need to keep my commitments. I need to keep my promises. I need to be reliable and dependable and truthful. Because that is, as I said, it's a fundamental that you are asking about anyone you're interacting with, and they are asking about you. The second is, are you committed? Now, Brother Charles and I developed this relationship. He's for the college. I'm for the college. I want to see this place grow. He wants to see it grow, and we're having this relationship. But at some point, I see his level of commitment is not what I think it ought to be. Now, we're here for that purpose. Well, when I see he is not as committed as I feel he ought to be, or he sees I'm not committed, again, we can still be friendly. We can still shake hands and smile and be casual, but we're never going to have that close relationship. Now, this is true in any relationship. You think of the husband-wife relationship. You think of the parent-child relationship. You think of the work relationship. You take your relationship with the Lord. Any of that takes a level of commitment to the relationship, or it will never get past being superficial. That makes sense to you? It's absolutely that people know you are committed to the relationship. And now we'll talk about this later. Talk is cheap. It's your actions that prove that. All right, the third one, and they're all equally important, but this one is extremely important, is do you care about me? Now, we laugh about this and we kid about it and we almost sometimes deny it, but you know the center of my universe, don't you? The center of my universe is me. Well, it is. You know the center of your universe is you. That's just the way God made us, so you don't have to apologize for that. You are the center of your universe. So as we are relating, can I trust you? Are you committed? Do you care about me? When I determine that Brother Charles does not care about me, we are never going to have a close relationship. So it is important that as you are fostering and nurturing a relationship that is important to you, be it, again, spouse, child, co-worker, friend, neighbor, the Lord, whoever it is, that you go out of your way and make it intentional to show that you care about them. It takes effort to do that, but be intentional in doing that. I managed any number of coal mines in my career, and several times I managed small coal mines, and I'd have 30 or 40 men, 50 men working for me. And what I tried to do, and I did do, was know every one of them by first name, and I would intentionally try to do a personal favor for every employee that I had. Now, they didn't know that, but I did that. And why I did that is because I was showing them that they were just not a worker, but I cared about them personally. And that then, in turn, developed a relationship with them. Do you care about me? And could they trust me? Yes. Was I committed? Yes. But did I care about that person individually? And I worked on that person knowing that I cared about them not just as a worker, but as a person. And so I would go out of my way to do a favor for each one of them. You build tremendous loyalty and commitment to the relationship when you show you care. Now, so often, our tendency is we are busy, we're preoccupied, they know I care, it's obvious I care, I'm the father, obviously I care about my children, or she's my wife, it's obvious I care about her, or you're my neighbor and we've been neighbors, it's obvious. No, intentionally do things to show them that you care. That builds lasting, effective relationships. Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit now about, some of you are probably familiar with this, but this is extremely important as relates to relationships. And I want you to think about a bank account. Probably all of you have a bank account somewhere not too far from here. And the way that bank account works is very simple. You go down you open up that account. That means I establish a relationship with that bank. And then on a fairly regular basis, when I was very young, it wasn't very frequent, but I'd go down and I'd make a deposit in the bank. It may be $5, it may be $20, it may be $50. But you make regular and routine deposits in the bank account. Then occasionally a bill would come up or a luxury that you wanted, and then what would you do? You go down to the bank account, and you make a withdrawal. So you make deposits, you make withdrawals. What is the one thing that you have to be very cautious about, though? Don't make more withdrawals than you do deposits. You get crossways. Bad things happen when you make more withdrawals than you do deposits. So you want to concentrate on making frequent and regular and as large a deposits as you possibly can, understanding there will be times you'll make withdrawals. Emotionally, in your relationship with people, it is exactly the same way. You have a relationship with someone. You remember that third question, do you care about me? And I'm showing I care, but I'm making deposits in each person that I care about in their emotional bank account. You make regular and frequent deposits. Now, if it's with your children, or it's a co-worker, or it's a subordinate, or anyone, sometimes you make withdrawals. And withdrawal is not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's intentional. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But you want to make regular and frequent deposits in the emotional bank account. Let's look just for a minute, if you will, at some of these deposits. We're short on time, so I'm not going to spend too much time on these, but they are very simple. Deposits are easy, and they're cheap is probably, they're inexpensive. Cheap's the wrong word because it has a negative connotation. But it costs very little, let me say it that way, to make these deposits in the emotional bank account. Let's look at some of the first three. Are compliments, acts of kindness, and expression of appreciation, and the fourth one, unsolicited favors. Simply going out of your way to be kind to people. Intentionally saying thank you. Intentionally saying, I appreciate that. Saying, that was nice of you. I want you to know how I would do this. My workers, when they would do something, I would want them to know, I want you to know you personally helped me by what you did. And I want you to know I appreciate that. And I just want to say verbally, I want to thank you for what you did. And then you can just see them, they just feel good about that. And you are fostering that relationship. But why is it that we don't do that? These compliments, acts of kindness, expression of appreciation, unsolicited favors. We're busy. We deem it to be unimportant. We don't care about that relationship. We're preoccupied with other things. Or we subconsciously, I've made those deposits. That money is in the bank. Be careful. Be careful, because you're making withdrawals. You don't want to become the bank account to become emotionally bankrupt. The other point that I want to talk about is these next two, and this is listening and quality time. The greatest way I can show you respect, one of the greatest ways, is to stop what I'm doing, pause, look you in the eye, and say, now tell me about that. And I give you my undivided attention. What I'm saying is, I care about you. Tell me about that. Now, the flip side, or the opposite of that, is whenever you want to talk to me, I've got the remote in one hand, one eye is asleep, and you're telling me about something deeply important in your life, and I say, keep going, or I'm on the computer, and I just keep going, go ahead, I'm listening. You know when someone does that to me, what I do? I just stop talking. I say, it's obvious you don't care what I have to say. I'm not going to say it. But so often we do that. And fathers, and in some respect, my children are grown now, I was chief among sinners. It is easy to do that. To not to listen. You show great disrespect when you fail to do that. If you want to make deposits in the emotional bank account, fellas, are you listening? You listening, fellas? Is you listen. And the other is quality time. And I struggle with that. I'm busy, I go, I do. But my wife of 39 years, the greatest way I can show that I can say I love her, I can tell her I love her, the greatest way I can show her I love her is by spending quality time with her. So that's extremely important. And when you do that, you are making deposits in the emotional bank account. Showing respect, praise. Just good job. Thank you. My, that was nice. My, you're good at that. Boy, that was wonderful. People love to be praised. They just do. I would tell that with my men. I would, you criticize him in private, you praise in public. And I would praise an employee or something. They say, I just put it on my paycheck. Save the praise, put it on. They say that, but they don't mean that. You appreciate praise. Just the smallest of things. I like your tie. Boy, it's a nice suit. Or that was a great meal. My, your hair looks nice. Simple things, little things. But our tendency is not to do them. And when we fail to do that, particularly with those that we care the most about, we are actually making withdrawals in the emotional bank account. And finally, sincere apologies. Why is it, as men particularly, we have such a difficult time saying, I was wrong. I'm sorry, I was wrong. My wife can do that so easily. She can just say, honey, I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that, and forgive me. She makes that seem so easy. But that is so difficult for me to say, I was wrong. I just didn't handle that right. Forgive me. We have a difficult time doing that. But people want to forgive, and people are willing to forgive when we say, I was wrong, I am sorry, forgive me. That, in fact, you can turn a negative into a positive, as long as you don't use it too often now. Just mess up and then keep saying sorry. That won't work. But a sincere apology really is a deposit in the emotional bank account. Let's look some now at the withdrawals. And they're obvious, but we tend to do them oftentimes, and more often not with the people that we care the most about. And that is simple rudeness, stubbornness, smart mouth. You know what that is? Smart mouth. With people that we care a lot about. And simple neglect. You have time for your friends, for your workers, for your hobbies, for your everything. But those that you care the most about, you don't have time for. And then you wonder what happens when the relationship goes bankrupt. It is because of withdrawal over time. Why is it that even in Christian circles, marriages of 25 and 30 and 35 years end up going south? The children are now grown. You started out just the two of you. The children are grown. You're totally consumed by raising the children. The children leave home, and now mom and dad can't get along anymore. Why? Right here, because of the failure. You are riding on old deposits, and in the meantime making withdrawal in terms of neglect, rudeness, stubbornness, smart mouth, failing to respect someone you care about, and you're too busy, failure to listen, and a critical spirit. All of those are withdrawals. And what happens? You say, what happened? My, that was such a little squabble. Why did she leave? Why did little Johnny rebel? Why did he go wrong? Why did I get fired? Any of these things. It was such a little thing. Because they are cumulative. They are cumulative. You quit making deposits a long time ago, and you are riding on deposits that you made when you were a teenager, or when you were young and in love, or when the little child was 3 years old and you bounced him on your knee and you hugged and you told him you loved him and you gave him time and attention, and then you rode those deposits and began to make withdrawal through neglect and critical spirit, withdrawal, and then before long, the relationship is bankrupt. Work at making deposits. I struggled at this because managing these coal mines, grizzled, dirty coal miners cussing and swearing and all kinds of problems and, firing people. And then you go home to a loving wife and wonderful children, and you cuddle and you love, and, you have to change hats. Well, I had a difficult time doing that, changing that hat from being in charge and being the boss and telling the way it is, to becoming a loving husband and a loving father. So because it was not easy for me, this is what I did, and I encourage you to do it. I don't have any coins in my pocket. Right, I would take coins, 10, 15 coins. I'd put them in my right-hand pocket. And I'd say intentionally, before the evening is over, I'm going to move. Every time I would make, now again, this has to be sincere. If you're manipulating, people will see through that very quickly. But I would intentionally, so as I would make a deposit with my children or my spouse, I would reward myself. I'd take that coin out of my right pocket. It's behavior modification is what it is. I would take that coin out of my right pocket. I'd put it in my left pocket. And my goal was, before the evening was over, to get all of those coins out of my right pocket and place them in my left pocket. Because it was not natural. What I wanted to do was go sit in my recliner with my remote and control in my hand, eat supper, and catnap until bedtime. That's what I wanted to do. But withdrawal, bankruptcy. So you can't do that. So intentionally make these deposits in the emotional bank account. Very important. Now let me just say something. Sometimes a withdrawal is not a bad thing. If there is a situation that has to be dealt with, you deal with it. But why is I was in California not too long ago, and this young preacher was talking. He said, man, I get so many visitors at my church. He said, and I preach. He said, and I preach hard to them. I preach hard, but nobody ever comes back. I said, duh. Immediately I went, you're making withdrawals when you've not made deposits. I can't tell you how you need to live and what you need to do and what all is wrong with you, and you receive it in the right spirit, if I have not first made the deposits that you know I care about you and that I'm committed to the relationship. And once you do that, and you make, now listen to this, you should make 10 deposits for every withdrawal. They're easy, they're simple, they're inexpensive. But you make 10 deposits for every withdrawal. And when withdrawal time comes, especially as it relates to child rearing, when I would discipline my children, and I had a paddle, and it stayed in their room, and they knew where it was, and I didn't use it often, but I did use it. But when I would use it, we made the biggest deal out of that. And I would tell them how much I loved them. I would tell them how much they disappointed me. Withdrawal. I would tell them I was going to spank them. Withdrawal. And then I would spank them. Withdrawal. And then you know what they would do? They would get up and hug my neck. Because I had made the deposits that allowed me to make that withdrawal. That's why the Bible says, fathers, provoke not your children to anger, lest they be discouraged. That discouraged is they quit. I can't satisfy you. I just give up. Because you haven't made the deposits. So you're going to have to make withdrawals on occasion. But you make sure the bank account will bear that withdrawal before you do it. Okay, let's move on very quickly. Let me just give you some observations or some pointers that I've observed as relates to good relationships. And again, you don't know what you don't know. If you've not been taught this, you may be guilty of this without realizing. The first is the people. If you will think about the people that you care about most, I'm talking about not necessarily family. You have to love family, right? But people that you choose to be a friend. Most of them are good listeners. People love to be around someone that will listen to you. You remember what I said, the center of your universe is? It's you. So if I want to talk about you, tell me about you. Tell me about what's your opinion on this? How do you feel about this? What do you think about? What do you enjoy? And you'll just see, you will develop a relationship with that person simply by showing, back to the third question, I'm showing I care about you. I'm making deposits by listening to you. And I'm showing you that I deem you to be important because I'm listening to you. Now, in Covey's 7 Habits, if you've seen the book, one of the first ones is, it says, seek first to understand and then to be understood. Now, it is inevitable that we will have disagreements. You'll have them with children, you'll have them with spouse, you'll have disagreements. What he is teaching here is so often, Charles and I are into an argument now. All right, so now I'm stating my position. So as I'm stating my position, more likely not, what's he doing? He's not listening, he's thinking about his position. So he says, he doesn't hear what I say, he begins to give his position. Now, I'm not listening to what it is, I'm just thinking my second point, you know. And so what happens is it's like ping pong, you know, but no one's listening. What if I did it this way? Charles, tell me how you feel about that. Now, why is that important to you? Explain to me why you think my position is wrong. Now, tell me exactly how you feel. Now, is there anything else I need to know about that? Is there anything else that I'm missing? Let me see if I understand now your position on this. He explains it. Now, is there anything else I need to know? No. See, now I've diffused him. He's said all he can say on making his point. I said, now let me tell you my position. See, I've shown him respect, and it's not this ping pong match. Let me give you two truths. Saying it louder does not make it more true. Saying it more often does not make it more true. So what you want to do is seek first to understand, then to be understood. It would diffuse a combative discussion or relationship. You ask questions and you listen and you repeat back what you've heard that person say to make sure you fully understand. That is showing them great respect. It would diffuse a difference. Our tendency, though, is I don't care what he says, I have my position. All I want to do is talk about my position. All he wants to do is talk about his position, and nothing is resolved. So you seek first, be a good listener, seek first to understand. Let's move on. All right, another pointer here. Be careful about talking too much about your favorite subject, yourself. All sentences do not have to include I, me, or mine. Now, it's our favorite subject. I understand that. And if you're not really careful, that's exactly what you'll do. I was in the airport the other day, and my wife and I were in Atlanta airport, and I wasn't eavesdropping, but she was just right there, and you couldn't help but hear her. And she was talking, and I think, and the whole group could hear it. I think, and I feel, and I want, and I need. Every sentence began with I, and I punched my wife because I do this teaching. I said, listen to her, and yet there just will not be anyone on the other end because it was all about her. Now, that's our favorite subject. I understand that. Let me change that. That's your favorite subject. But your life is not necessarily my favorite subject. You know what I mean? So the best way is to be a good listener. And now there's a time for your opinion and how you feel. And let me just be brutally honest here with you fellas. A lot of you're young men here, and so often not as pastors and preachers, you're the most important person in the room. And you tend to dominate the discussions. And my experience has been most pastors are not good listeners. You know, they're usually charismatic, they're bold, they're outspoken, and before you know, it's all about themselves. Just be careful about that. That tires on people. It tires on them after a while, just when you talk about yourself. Let's move on. The second relationship tip is your opinion is not always needed. Now, I always have it. I always have that opinion, but we don't always have to give it. Even though you have the answer to all life's problems, we know you do, sometimes that opinion is not necessarily needed. And when I learned this one the hard way. When I was young and I was in college and I was saved and I was on fire for the Lord and I just wanted to hammer everybody. You know, just this is the way it is. You know, I've got the answer to all life's problems and just hammer. And you know what happens? Pretty soon people shun you. They run from you. because they don't want to hear that. So now I can see two people arguing and can show them chapter and verse or can tell them the answer, but I feel no need necessarily to tell that. But so often I know the answer. Let me get in there and win that. You don't have to do that. Back off, and then when someone asks your opinion, it's much more appreciated than when you go out just giving it out when it's not necessarily asked for. It's better when it's asked for. Let's move on. Here's another one. You do not have to win all arguments. It's okay to let others be wrong sometimes. I call that keeping your powder dry. Some arguments are worth winning. Some arguments are worth dying for, but not all of them. Not all arguments. Have you seen those people that are just argumentative? If you say it's white, they have to say it's black. If you say it's up, they say it just has to be down. And they just want to argue over everything. Now, you can get by with that for a little while, but pretty soon that's what you're known for. There was a young man that I grew up with. He became a teacher. I remember well. I could tell you his name. That's been many, many years ago. But he fought and argued over everything. And pretty soon you become despisable. People just do not like being around that. So if it's an argument, you calculate, is this an argument for some reason I really need to win? Then win the argument. But again, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Use that approach. But all these petty things that really don't mean anything in the big issues of life, leave them alone. You can have an opinion that's different from mine. Who made me, God, to tell you the way everything ought to be? Or who made you to have the answer to all life's problems? Leave room for others to have opposing opinions without you feeling the need to correct those. It's okay to let them be wrong. Let them be wrong. Let's move on. Another point is, as relates to relationships, we all are fallible beings. We all mess up. We all mess up. We all do things and say things on occasion that we shouldn't. You must be willing to forgive. If you will only relate to the perfect people, your sphere of friends is going to be pretty small. People are going to do you wrong, intentionally or unintentionally. It's going to happen. You must be willing to forgive. And you want to forgive for any number of reasons. First, because the Bible teaches us to forgive. But one of the reasons I think the Bible teaches us to forgive is you don't want to carry, so I don't want to carry a grudge against you, not just for you. I don't want to carry the grudge against you because I don't want to carry that load around. That burden, that baggage of anger and even hatred and bitterness and strife. I don't want to carry those around. So I'm going to, and it is a choice that I choose to forgive you. Because bitterness destroys the vessel that it's kept in. So I'm going to forgive you not just for your sake. More importantly, I'm going to forgive you for my sake, to let it go. Now, our tendency is to say it's not a choice, that somehow I can't forgive. But forgiveness is a choice. You can choose to forgive. Now, you can blame it on your heritage, the degree of wrongness that was done you, your family heritage, your ethnicity, of why I can't forgive. But the truth is, it's a choice. You can forgive. And forgive and let it go because you don't want it to destroy you. A couple more here and we'll finish up. Now, this is extremely important. It's a simple concept, but it's very important. That is, you can't talk yourself out of a situation that you behave your way into. Now, think about that for a minute. So often as guys, we say, well, I said I was sorry. I said I was sorry. Now, all things are equal. No. Not if there was a long period of distrust or of rudeness or lack of forgiving or neglect, or you fell into sin. And then all of a sudden you say, oh, I was wrong. You have an epiphany, and I was wrong, and from now on, I won't ever do that again. Now, our relationship's right back where it used to be. No, wish it were. Doesn't work that way. If you were could not be trusted, and you said, now I'm sorry, now you can trust me, the amount of time that you were distrustful, you better have to have that same amount of time showing you are trustworthy. And then you can get back to square one. But you can't get back to square one just by saying, I'm sorry. Now, it starts by saying, I'm sorry. But then your behavior, you must walk the talk. Talk is cheap. It's easy to say, I'm sorry, and keep doing what you're doing. So, and oftentimes that's what we've done. And so that's why that person that you care about, you're almost, in a sense, on probation. That is, you got to behave your way out of that situation. If you weren't loving, you got to be loving. If you weren't trustworthy, you got to be trustworthy. If you weren't faithful, you got to be faithful for the amount of time that you were not what you were supposed to be. It starts with saying, I'm sorry, but then it progresses through a changed behavior. You must behave your way out of a situation that you behave your way into. Your actions speak louder than your words. Talk is cheap. Saying, I'm sorry is cheap. But behave your way out of that situation. Again, I just say that because so often people will say, well, I said I was sorry, so why is it now everything's not equal? Well, because you behave your way into that situation. You must behave your way back out of it. Let's move. Lastly, is be cautious about being overly negative or critical. Now, it's not your place to correct all the world's ills. Each of us, I'm a fruit inspector, and so I can see all of your flaws and shortcomings, just as you can see mine. But who made you judge? Who made you the one to correct all the world's wrongs? So be careful. Now, there is a place to correct, particularly as it relates with children. There is a time to correct, but not that critical spirit that before long identifies you, or that's how you're seen to be. They're always negative. They're always against it. I have a friend, and he's a good friend, and I like him. But it's almost comical. We'll work. We have a farm, and we'll work on the farm, and he'll help us. And my brother said, no, I won't tell you his name, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, he said, it doesn't matter what I suggest. He always is against it. And that's just his nature. No matter what you suggest, he has a different idea. And before long, you know what? That identifies him. That's how he is known. You know how many friends he has? You probably count them on one hand. People just don't like him because of that. So be careful. Back to the emotional bank account. You think about those compliments and that praise and that the thankfulness and that quality time and expressions of appreciation. You do that because you show people you care about them, and they will gravitate to you. You have this critical spirit of where everything's bad and negative, and I see all your shortcomings and all your faults. I have plenty of them. I know more of them than you know I have. I don't need you to tell me about them. I know about them. And we're all that way. We all have our insecurities and our doubts and our shortcomings. Last thing we need is someone coming along pointing them out to you. If you're going to do that, it needs to be intentional, and it needs to be understanding it is a withdrawal, and understanding that I have made sufficient deposits in order to make that withdrawal. And sometimes you have to do that. But that should not define you. You should not be defined as a person that's overly negative or critical. You should be intentionally upbeat and complimentary and kind, just like the Bible teaches us. But that's not our nature. Our old carnal nature tends to be about self and to be about negative, tend about not forgiving, and tend to make lots of withdrawals from the emotional bank account. All right, so let's summarize with this. Relationships are the most important thing in life. And as you get older, young folks, you will realize that more and more. More of my life is behind me than is out in front of me. I'm going tomorrow to Florida to be with my grandchildren because that's important to me. I'm selling my house in East Tennessee to move to Raleigh to be with my boys and to be with my grandchildren, because relationships are the important thing in life. Possessions are fine. Trinkets and toys are okay, but they will never bring you the happiness of a fulfilled, gratified, full relationship with people that you care about and that care about you.